All of the moments immediately following Jesus' bodily resurrection from the dead are strange and confusing. His followers all wonder, what's going on? What's going to happen next? What are we supposed to do now? Usually, the joy of Easter Day passes and we move right on with the beauty of spring. But this year we continue with confusion and the unknown. Therefore, I suggest to you that on this morning of Eastertide, where we find ourselves in our common life is not all that dissimilar to where those first disciples were. We too have been locked in our homes in varying degrees of fear and anxiety, not for fear of the Romans or for corrupt religious leaders, but for the fear being caused by sickness and by death in this global pandemic. It's difficult to make sense of all the trauma that we are witnessing, and it is certainly much closer for some than for others. We can't see our way forward to what will come next. And of course, we might even be wondering where God is in all of this. We, like those early disciples, are experiencing a range of emotions. The fullness of resurrection is difficult to grasp. I saw a humorous church Zoom cartoon last week. There have been a lot of these going around. And this one was of a Zoom call with all the disciples on the call, and so it was drawn with all the little squares, and it had each of the disciples in one of the squares. And there was one blank screen, as there often is, for somebody who's on audio. And the blank block read, Jesus. And the blank block then says, hey. And Simon responds, how on earth is he in the meeting? To which Thomas responds, unless he turns on his camera, I will not believe it is him. It's kind of funny, this little cartoon, but it's also kind of true for us on this second Sunday of Easter. Because you see, Thomas wants to see Jesus face to face. And during this pandemic, we've all been on enough Zoom calls and meetings to know the experience of seeing our family, friends, and coworkers online. We know the Zoom experience of seeing people on the call and sometimes having a blank screen where someone is just there by audio. They don't really seem to be there in the same way. Maybe they're doing something else and not really paying attention. I have to admit that I've been one of those people before. But if that blank screen is even muted, then we wonder if they're even there at all. Maybe they went off to the kitchen to get something to eat. FaceTime and Zoom are technological blessings for us in this time of lockdown and sheltering in place. Now that we can see each other on Zoom, we are realizing more and more our desire and even our need for this visual connection when physical contact with those we care about is not possible. It is good to see each other, to know how others are getting along in this uncertain and stressful time. So when we can't see someone's face on Zoom, they are somehow missing. We're not really sure how they're doing if we can't see their smiles, or their tears, or their familiar ways. The physical and social distances of this time are disconcerting and they're frustrating. We need whatever social contact we can muster. And so we arrange for Zoom coffee times or Zoom happy hours. Thomas wants to be reconnected to Jesus in all the physical and social ways that he's used to. They have become brothers. His connection to Jesus has given his life meaning and purpose. And now all of that has been suddenly stripped away. After the violence of the crucifixion, all of the disciples' companionship and ministry with Jesus seems to have come to a dead end. They are all huddled together there in that locked room, wondering what to do now, what comes next, when will things return to normal? And so John tells us that in that moment of confusion and doubt, the risen Christ miraculously appears to them and says, "Peace be with you." They are certainly startled and disoriented by this mysterious appearance. And then to confirm what they are seeing, Jesus shows them his wounds. There is physical connection. He is not a ghost. And they rejoice. Jesus, our master and friend, is not dead after all. Great. Let's get things back to normal. Pick up where we left off. The disciples wish for things to return to those more peaceful days, walking by the Sea of Galilee with their friend. This is Thomas's wish. He wants to be with the physical, flesh and blood Jesus. In our time, we also desire for things to return to normal, whatever that might mean. But the crucifixion shows us the hard reality that the ways of the world do not often conform to our versions of happiness. For far too many, it never has. Important for us this morning, Jesus shows them his wounds not merely as proof that he's physically with them, but as a reminder that he joins into the suffering of the world and will continue to be alongside them and us as we face suffering, doubt, and confusion. After Thomas is able to see and touch Jesus, Jesus says, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have come to believe." And these words are a blessing for us. This is our hope. The ministry of mercy and forgiveness, this message of God's love and grace that Jesus has been teaching them all along, now belongs to them. It was theirs and now ours to carry forward to others. Jesus says, "Peace be with you," to them and to us. Jesus assures them and he assures us that under the power of God's Holy Spirit, he will be with us as we go about this ministry of love and reconciliation in the world. Now, we might not always be able to see where Jesus is active in our human suffering, but he is there. He is risen, and we are risen to a new life in him. So let us live into this risen life with patience and hope. We are to be Easter people. We are to strive to love others in the ways that Jesus teaches us. In this time of pandemic, we will have to continue to be faithful and creative in our responses and prayers for the human family. Let us reach out to each other and to our neighbors with care and with understanding. Let us offer Jesus' peace. Let us act on the words that opened our worship this morning on this second Sunday of Easter. Grant that all who have been reborn into the fellowship of Christ's body show forth in their lives what they profess by their faith. Amen. Hallelujah. Christ is